Welcome back to another edition of the Educational AD Podcast. We couldn't do these without the incredible support of our sponsors, and we want to start by saying thank you to all of them. First, thanks to our diamond sponsor, Varsity Brands, including BSN, Varsity Spirit, and Herff Jones. Varsity Brands, elevating student experiences in sport, spirit, and achievement. We also want to thank our platinum sponsors, including Ephesus Lighting, innovating a brighter future at every level. Gilman Gear, always a step ahead. Camp Mobile, where teams communicate better. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. And Vital Signs, bring student achievements to life. Thanks to all of our great sponsors. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast, this time featuring the FIAAA Insider. Our guest today is an old friend, Deb Savino. Deb is a certified master athletic administrator, and she's the assistant athletic director at the Ransom Everglades School in Coconut Creek, Florida. Deb, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for doing all of these. They're awesome.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. We're certainly having a lot of fun. Well, as you and I talked, the life of an AD these days is particularly busy, so we're going to jump right into it. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school and college, and how your love of sports, led to this career in athletic administration.
Sure. I grew up in Maine, long way from here. Definitely worked my way all the way south. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, which was, I think, definitely benefit to me as far as getting to know different coaches, using the different muscles you need. And then I got to go on to be a 2-sport athlete in college, in a small Division III school in Massachusetts, Clark University. We were actually, this is going to age me, but that's okay. We were blessed to go to one of the first Final Fours for women in Division III. And so that was an awesome experience, because then the next year we actually got to host it. And those were some great times. And it just tells you how far women's sports have come.
Oh, yeah.
But those were some of the fondest memories I have of athletics. And, I definitely would not be the person I am today without having those things in my life. But some of the greatest things, I think, for people going to college is, if you're participating in athletics, you definitely have your instant connections.
Oh, yeah.
And you're part of a team. And being part of it, I got to travel. Back then it was not common for us to be going very far. I got to make my first plane ride, things like that. But it also helped to focus. Without athletics, I think a lot of kids would have a lot of time on their hands, and athletics is definitely a great way to put things in perspective and line things up for kids. So that was wonderful. It's a great experience for me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, what happened after college and graduation? What was the next step?
Well, interestingly enough, right out of school, I did actually coach for a couple of years, but I was in the business world. So my degree was not in education, and I was in the business world, and that career took off so that I did drop education. I did drop my coaching. And interestingly enough, when I got to the top of that business world, the executive director of a nonprofit, I just was missing something, and decided that I needed to get back to school, get back to being part of the competition and being part of athletics. My first dabble was I got back into the competition by refereeing. And so that was the first piece, and I still enjoy refereeing. I get to well, we don't have field hockey down here in Florida, but we do have lacrosse, so I do still get to enjoy that. But that was my first step back into the athletic realm, and I went back to school, got my master's in physical education, which was what allowed me to get back into the private sector of education. And so in 2000, I got my first full-time teaching, coaching job at a private school up in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then from there in 2007, I actually left the private school and went to coach at basketball in the collegiate level. And then that left me without coaching. I was coaching field hockey as well. And after a couple years there, I had an athletic director seek me out. They needed a field hockey coach, and they're far and few between in the South. So he sought me out, but he also had an admin gig to go with it, which was appealing, very appealing, especially, and I was coaching at the Division II level. And you're wearing a lot of hats at that level in order to keep your program going. So, you know, I was up at 6 a.m. doing the morning workouts, teaching courses at the collegiate level, having practices or workouts or whatever, and then running off to do some refereeing just to make ends meet. So I was quite busy. And so I was made an offer I couldn't refuse, got back into the private sector back in Charlotte. And that's where I started my administrative gig and started the whole journey towards being an administrator. And that's where I started taking the NIAAA courses and began that whole journey towards, you know, getting your CAA and then your CMAA. So it's been quite a whirlwind until, you know, coming here to Florida just last fall, actually July is when I started down here.
Well, that's your time at Charlotte was when you and I first crossed paths on that certification route. Let's go and talk about that a little bit. We have a lot of younger ADs that listen to the podcast, and I think it's important for them to understand the journey that, you know, you and I, you know, and many others take with regards to, you know, the LTC courses and certification. So just kind of give some broad brushstrokes, you know, how you became aware of the national organization and your CAA and then your project for your CMAA.
Sure. Well, my first course, interestingly enough, I took in one summer. And it was, you know, I was trying to get my AD we had a change in ADs and at Latin, and I was trying to get him to approve it and didn't hear from him. And so I just actually drove out to Wilmington and signed up that day, got into that first course, and I enjoyed it. It was wonderful. It was 502 or something like that, and loved what I heard. And what I enjoyed was they don't just have one person up there lecturing, they have a group of people. So that's a great situation because you get to hear a variety of stories. But they also involve everybody in the course. Once that happened, I also, once I got back into the fall semester at school, I got them to actually approve for me to come down to the FIAAA conference. And that's where I got my next 4 courses, which is one of the great things about the FIAAA conference is you guys offer a ton of courses, and you make it real easy to be able to bang those courses out in the couple of days that you have. So I took those courses that next spring. It was in May. And then in July, I happened to be up in Cape Cod for my vacation, and that's where I took my test, my CAA test. So I just kind of was running all around trying to get things done because it gets you motivated, it gets you excited to be able to be part of an administration, situation. And that, interestingly enough, the gentleman out there, he was on vacation too. The guy who was administrating the test, he was from New York. So that was I was like, well, I guess everybody is jumping around trying to get things done. And then from there, also from the FIAAA, I had my my actual project I got from one of the roundtables with Jerry, who's out of Lake Brantley.
Right.
So that's where I actually got my idea for my project that you were the reader on. And most of my courses that I actually took at the FIAAA. Each year my, Charlotte Latin, bless them, allowed me to come down, and I took courses every year. They also one year allowed me to go to the NIAAA that was in Tampa. No, it was in Orlando, sorry. And took courses there, was part of that conference. And it's been a great experience. I've probably got about 17 courses in, and I've taken them from people out of Texas, all over the place. So it's a great situation, and you learn so much. And connections, you just learn a ton, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. So.
Well, I appreciate that shout out. I knew you'd taken some courses at FIAAA, and we encourage all ADs to come down to Orlando for our state conference in May. And I also attended the Section 1 Cape Cod Institute to knock out a couple extra classes when I was trying to qualify for my CMAA. So I want to give them a shout out as well, Pete Shambo and all those guys up in New York that run that program. So. Well, Deb, you've had quite a journey, private sector and college and high schools. I'm sure there's been some mentors along the way that have influenced you. And we always like to, try and highlight the people that have been impactful in our guests' lives. So who are some of your mentors, growing up, or people that you worked with or worked for? Whose voice do you still hear when you go to work each day?
Well, yeah, there's a few people that have really influenced me, and my parents definitely influenced me in the whole piece of hard work. And I'd say that's the huge maniac in me, that no matter what you're doing, you do your best. It doesn't matter. And so that was one of the biggest things that they impressed on me. And I've worked in many different jobs, so the summers and things, and that was something that I always knew that I had to do. So that was the biggest thing from them. My high school coach, Linda Whitney, to this day, it was discipline. You just need to keep at it and keep things in your back of your head, what you want, and just keep on keeping on. And she was my basketball and field hockey coach. So great lady. Stay in touch with her today, and lots of lessons. And then for my bosses, there were two. The one lady that I really miss still today, she coached basketball with her at Wingate and at one of the private schools that I worked at up in Charlotte, and Barb Nelson. And one of the biggest things that she impressed upon me is that you got to be fair, no matter what. Things may not be equal, but you got to be fair. So that was huge. And Jimmy Broadway at Charlotte Latin School, he was the AD that came looking for me. And it was funny because when I was coming down to Ransom, he called me up and said, okay, so one of the things that you need to know, Deb, is when you start to sit down with your coaches, just listen. They're going to tell you a lot. Just listen, and ask them when they're done, say anything else, and then confirm. And so those are some wise things for me, and those are things that I have always kept to heart. So
Well, I appreciate you sharing. And it's just easy to see that for all of us, there's people that have touched our lives along the way that, help us continue to do a great job. I know you're doing a great job down there. Um, Speaking of the job, you've been an athletic administrator for a number of years. You've been involved in athletics. Um, Obviously, the day-to-day job of an AD has changed over time. Technology certainly, but what changes have you noticed in your time as an athletic director, both at Charlotte Latin and now at Ransom? How's the day-to-day job changed?
Um, I think the biggest is the whole social media situation. And I don't just mean that for us as the AD, because I think that is actually positive for us because it's an easy way for us to disseminate the information in a controlled manner. And obviously it needs to be vetted by someone in particular. So I think that's a huge plus for us at this point because we can get the information out quickly. The score, whatever it might be, you can send a video. I think that's huge, whereas before, it took time for that information to get out. And I mean, you live stream things at this point. So everything, that kind of stuff, I think is wonderful. For the kids on the social media, I think that's tough on them because it can be positive or negative. And impressing upon them that they leave a digital footprint is hard sometimes. And understanding that they really need to be thoughtful about what they're putting out there. They could can go either way. And so they really need to be smart and kind and careful when they put things out. Because, I know of kids who have lost their scholarship because of something they've put out there. And then, of kids who've gotten scholarships because of something they've put out there. So, and those kids are usually, the kids who are academically gifted and they're putting something out there to go to Harvard and someone from Harvard picks that up. But it's really difficult for kids to understand that one small unforgiving picture might take away their dream. And so that I think is some of the biggest things for the change in our world in particular.
Appreciate you sharing. Let's go ahead and talk about COVID. And, for our listeners, just a little spoiler alert. We're recording this interview on September 11th. And, our schools, Deb's school and my school, we're very similar. We're private schools, college prep schools. We're K through 12, and we're both in Florida. I'm up in the Panhandle, and Deb's down in Coconut Creek, about as south as you can get in Florida. And we operate under the same state association rules, the same governor, and yet we have two dramatically different responses to COVID. We are currently, my school is currently in week 5. We have classes, mostly brick and mortar, but some online. We've had games already. We have our first football game tonight, but it's a little bit different for Deb and the school, many of the schools down in South Florida. So Deb, what's happening right now at your school as far as return to school academics and as far as return to school athletics?
Well, athletics is actually for the upper school is going to return on 9/14. And so it's going to be very limited though. Volleyball, golf, cross country, and swimming is going to be skills only for volleyball. Swimming's only going to be two people per lane. Cross country is going to be 5 to a group that's going to get to run. And then of course they've got to practice for 2 weeks before they can even have any competitions, because that's the state rule. Football is not going to start until 9/28. We are not even going to be back in school until October 12th. And that decision was actually just made last week. We were supposed to return to school on 9/14. And they made that decision because we have a panel of doctors that we work with, as well as, the board, and our head of school, as well as a couple of the administrators. And they made that decision based on the numbers, the percentages that are happening here in Miami, because we're still really high, and not as high as we were. We're still above the 5%, but also worried about the whole Labor Day spikes and things like that. We do have some schools down here that are open, some of the private schools, but not all. And some of the schools that actually did some of the hybrid situations have found those situations to be very difficult. And especially because some people have chosen, even though it's hybrid, not to even come back yet. So it's been difficult for them to be able to follow through with things. So we are in a difficult situation. Our middle school conference, interestingly enough, we've actually came to a conclusion that, we'll wait until 10/12 to actually, and it wasn't just, because that's when we're coming back to school as Ransom Everglades. We actually decided that as a conference that's when we were going to start middle school sports, but we also switched some sports around and only went to outdoor sports for the fall. So we did move our soccer season to the fall, and it's going to be in conflict with football. So we're trying to work through some of those issues with our parents, with how we can work through and help kids to maybe possibly do both. So we have some things that we're working through, next week we're still actually going to do the conditioning only with our strength and conditioning coaches. Volleyball is going to be inside skills only with masks on, and they'll go outside with the conditioning coaches for that. So football is doing some conditioning right now with the conditioning coaches outside. They're not doing anything with a ball right now. So it's really been tough, and parents would like to move forward, and that's been tough, but we are trying to be safe, and that's our main concern.
Do you see any flexibility in those start dates? If there isn't a detected Labor Day spike and the infection rates continue to drop, or do you think those are pretty solid for your school?
We are looking at trying to bring back individual grades earlier to go for a test run. So I think they will. The board and the group that meets, they meet on a regular basis to take a look at what's happening. So yes, there is that possibility. But they are definitely looking at everything very closely, trying to, we still actually have families that aren't even in Miami. Mm-hmm. So, they've been really taking a look at things and trying to make sure that we keep on top of it. So. Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate you sharing, and certainly, we wish you guys and all of South Florida and Broward County and Palm Beach County, the very best. And we just hope that everything continues to trend in a positive way, and that y'all are able to get back into school, and then, of course, get back with sports too. Another question we've been asking our athletic directors relates to another national trend, if you will. Last spring, COVID hit, but last spring we also saw just a tremendous increase in awareness regarding, social issues or social justice, if you will. The events in Minneapolis and Atlanta, and then just recently in Wisconsin. And my question is this: as school-based athletic directors, what are some things that we can do better, with our kids, with our teams, with our communities in this area of social awareness?
Well, since we are educational-based athletics, I think that we can play a huge role. As coaches and educators, we need to help shift the issues to a community-based mindset. Um, this is a mutual responsibility for us to move forward and change the current culture. And I think, Ransom Everglades has actually listened to our alum. We've had different speakers come in. Of course, they've had teachers and coaches. We had readings this summer that we needed to take part in and become more aware of the situation and how to handle things. It's really important that we take on the difficult conversations that may occur. And so we are trying to have speakers come in and be able to educate and be able to help with that kind of thing. We have programs through our advisory that we try to engage our students in certain conversations to be able to be better, kinder people. So we are working at that with our students, and that'll extend with the teams. So that is something that we just, this is something that our whole community needs to take care of. It shouldn't just be on any one group. So we're hoping to make sure that we do it in every aspect of our school. So
it's great to hear your school's being proactive on that. Last question before we wrap up. You had some tremendous success at Charlotte Latin, as a coach, as well as an AD, and now you're down here in South Florida at Ransom. What's something that you've done at either school that you're particularly proud of? You look back or you look at it and you say, hey, we really did a good job with that.
Well, at Charlotte Latin, the project that you read, it was for a student-led group for them to be leaders, and that was something that we started it with the adults leading that, and by the end, before I left, we had the students leading it, and they would come up with things, and they would lead the group meetings and the actual little activities that they did, and that was a great thing to see, because it was nice to see them flourish in things, and actually I felt like the rest of the students were actually learning more by having the leaders teach it, so rather than us adults. So that was a nice thing for me to see. So that's something I was really proud of, and it's still going on. One of the other athletic directors there was a big part of being in on that, and she actually took it over when I left. So it's still going, and it's still strong, and it's something that the kids really enjoy. So that's one of the things there I'm super proud of. One of the things here that I continue to work on, and we talked about actually in the interview, was that so I'm here at the middle school trying to run these programs, and trying to make a connection between the upper school and the middle school programs as a program, not just, oh, here's the middle school teams and here's the upper school teams, and trying to make them a full program rather than just separate. So that's something that we're working on, and we've got that going for some teams and programs, but not all at this point. So some good examples are the basketball groups. We actually last year got in some new coaches for them for the varsity teams. They bought into it immediately, so that was perfect. So we've got some other people we need to get to buy in, and so we're slowly but surely going to have to work a little harder on that.
Mm. Yeah, those are two great examples, and again, having that program approach from varsity to JV down into middle school, it certainly is a best practice, and I don't think it'll take long for those other coaches to see the benefits of doing that. And your student leadership program, as a member certification, I get to read a lot of projects, and they're all good. Yours was particularly good. So if you're looking as an AD, if you're looking to start a student leadership program, get in touch with Deb. I'm sure she'd be happy to share what they did at her previous school.
Thank you.
Well, my friend, we are just about out of time, but we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. You are certainly an experienced AD, but now I'm challenging you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first assignment. But I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go into Deb Savino's athletic director toolbox?
Okay, well, I'm assuming that if they got the job, they're already organized and a good communicator and professional. So I think one of the big things is, and sometimes it's hard for people to be able to do this, but you got to be able to move through your mistakes with grace. I think it's vital to do that. And in order to do that, you got to prioritize, what's the impact of that mistake. Acknowledge it, apologize, and then correct it. And if you think about it, one of the biggest things you always do with your athletes is to be able to say to them, hey, we got to recover from our failure. It's what teaches us. And you got to think of it the same way. And I think that people around you also appreciate when you admit and correct and take care of things. And it also shows that you're humble. So I think that's huge. Just to be able to move through your mistakes with some grace. And then control the controllables. That's one of the biggest things that I've always told my athletes. And if you over prepare for your things that you can control, and then just go with the flow, it'll be a lot easier for you. Because you can certainly, there's a lot of things that you do have control of, but there's a lot of things that you don't. So you've got to be able to just move on through and realize that, because there are a lot of things that you just do not have control of. My last thing would be just what I said that my former boss told me was to listen to people carefully. Always ask them, is there anything else? Just because I think that a lot of times people don't feel like they're listened to. If when you do hear something, make sure you confirm it, just because you want to make sure that you have what you need before you go out there. People will tell you a lot. Just listen. Just take a minute. So.
Great advice, and I always appreciate when ADs, share the listen component. For me, it's shut up and listen, Jake. Appreciate you being on the podcast today. This is great. Always great to talk with you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Good to see you.
Well, we're not going to see each other at the national conference in December,
I saw that.
but hopefully things will have changed a little bit in May of 21. And again, to our listeners, we encourage you to come down to the FIAAA conference that first weekend in May and take some LTI courses and take a few workshops. You'll see both Deb and I there.
Absolutely.
Well, again, to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Come back again next time for another edition of the Educational AD. Thanks again for listening to the Educational AD podcast. Remember, these episodes are also being uploaded to the YouTube channel, FIAAA Educational AD Podcast. Thanks again for listening.